I read this great tweet yesterday. It was like, people will invent all these other ways to make money except selling something.
Wait. Yeah. Which is basically all making money.
That's all economic activity, right? There's basically like you're hovering around the actual thing that you're supposed to do.
Launching a meme coin, finding interest in a high savings account. Just fucking sell something. This is like the oldest human activity. No, that's hysterical, dude.
Incredible.
That's like busy. That is hysterical.
All right, welcome to another episode of No Investment Advice. You got Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi, and Jack Butcher. And this is part 2 of the AMA. We did the first one last week. Now, we actually ended up breaking this into 2 parts because there's so many good questions. Great discussion last time round. Boys, let's follow up on where we left off. So there was a great question last episode about balancing career and professional life with like having fun. You guys shared a lot of stuff on this. So another kind of follow-up question to this is actually finding that career focus. So Trung, you were talking about the
fun criterion.
But let's say specifically for you two, and I can share mine as well. A lot of people talk about like ikigai, things that you love, things that you are good at, what you can get paid for. And I forgot the fourth part of it. But how do you guys hone in on...
What's good for the world or something?
Yeah, what's good for the world, exactly. Yeah, what people need or something. So specifically, was that something along those lines that you ever used in your career? And if not, like how did you hone in on your particular focus in different parts of your career? Work.
Jack, hit it.
I think it took forever to basically have the courage to stop doing the stuff that is not like fully in your wheelhouse and believe that if you pivot fully to this thing that you're great at, that the demand for it will be in excess of remaining the jack of all trades, if you excuse the pun. Like the agency business where you're like, I can answer any creative brief, right? Oh, you want a video made? No worries. You want a website made? Great. You want a email sequence written? Yeah, we could do that. And it's like the arrogance to think that you're going to be great at that, especially if you're on your own. And I think a lot of this, like what we're talking about, we're looking at it through that biased lens of like how to be as independent as possible and how to like run lean. For a lot of people, that's not what they want, or like the advice would be totally different if it's like you want to work at a massive company and the skills that are beneficial there are very different than trying to be a solo operator. But yeah, the biggest inflection points for me were just like what's like stop believing your own bullshit too, of like going back to that little sequence of advice that we got all those episodes ago. It's like you can't be everything to everyone. You have to identify these things that you are at the very least interested in, and then only then do you have any hope of getting good at that thing. And then I made this presentation years ago. It was I forget the acronym, but it basically like try a bunch of stuff. So say yes to a bunch of stuff, like get a bunch of life experience, and then you have to viciously pivot from that mentality and start saying no to everything. Like you get this gamut of experience by being open to all of these things, and then you kind of conflate that with like, oh, I got great at this because I said yes to everything. It's like that's not what happened. You got lucky because you tried a lot of stuff. And now you have like this glimmer of market feedback that you are above average at this thing, or your attention span personally lasts longer when you're doing this thing. Therefore, you have an advantage when you get better at it. And then you have to have the confidence to say, okay, I say no to everything else. I'm just doing this. And the irony is, as you get better at that thing, your network grows, you have more exposure to more people, you get more offers. Do this for me. I know it's not quite what you want to do, but it's kind of there. And then you say yes to that. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And then you say yes again. Like at every stage in your career, this happens where like you feel like you've overcome that. I'm like, I'm great at this. Now I can take the other thing on. It's exactly what Sailor said at the end of that pod. And I find myself doing this all the time. I have like these phases where I'll say yes to stuff. And then I'm like, I'll be laying in bed at night. I'm like, why the fuck did I agree to that? There's absolutely zero reason for me to do that. And there's been a few, we should try and dig this up and put it in the description. But I think there's huge upside to having basically a pre-written letter to say like, hey, I'm totally flattered that you reached out to me to do this, but I'm going to let you down because I'm not fully focused on this. As opposed to saying, let me think about it, or maybe let's talk about it. Let's get on a call.
Heads down.
Exactly.
It's true though.
Bro.
But it is true.
Heads down.
You got to do that.
Yeah.
No, I dropped heads down and mental bandwidth. I just don't have the bandwidth right now, man. I don't know. Here's the other line, Jack. I feel bad.
I think even that is wrong.
Give you 100%.
Yeah. But I think even that is like, it kind of leaves this thing open to interpretation because everyone's like trying to hedge it and be like, oh, maybe you can come back and maybe we could do it later. So like,
when your bandwidth is back,
even that language, to your point, Trung, like the language you use when you speak to yourself, when you put stuff out into the world, it has a lasting effect, right? Where you're like, if you hedge in the language you use to somebody, that actually will seep back into your behavior.
Yeah,
That's a
you're
great
right.
Point.
Versus hey, I have something I'm doing. I appreciate you reaching out to me for this, but no, I do not do this.
Yeah, you got to say it with chest, as they say. Yeah, so that's
100%. 100%. And it's hard.
Jack, this happened literally. We were talking about it just before we recorded. It's been happening for me recently. And even with Melina, who I work with on some of the agency stuff, where we're kind of getting in a situation where we were like, oh, should we take this on? And it's like not exactly what we normally focus on, but it's kind of adjacent. And we're like, well, yeah, maybe this is actually a good growth area because a lot of people have been asking for it. And then you're kind of like tiptoeing in and out. And then at some point you got to be like, actually, no, this is just not the right focus, or it is, and kind of decide. And now I will say, based on the original question from last week about 20s, there is a pivot point though, right? And I think around like where you are trying lots of things and you're saying yes to a lot of things, which is a good thing early on. But at some point you got to realize, okay, now something's actually working. I need to focus on that and be more focused on that. And so I guess the follow-up question is like how you know that point has been hit. Because, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, well now you got to focus on this one thing. But let's say you don't have something that's working, then you haven't found that thing yet. So how do you find that thing?
Criterion.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, because Jack said something that was interesting. So Bilal, like your thoughts on this. Because it sounds like you guys did something similar with the agency. When Jack was like, I said yes to something, and I was wondering at night, why did I do that?
I wrote a note on that too.
It's a feeling, right? You're like, oh, you know when you say yes to something, and immediately you're just like, that's a feeling.
That's the filter, Jack. That's the feeling. It's like, oh, why did I say yes? It also happens in your personal life a lot as well, where you're like, why did I say? Like, I'll give an example. Someone I met recently, super nice guy, but I just met him like one evening with like a mutual friend, and that happens quite a lot. Where if someone knows you do podcasts or making stuff on the internet, they're like, oh, I've been thinking of podcasts. And honestly, the last 3 group events I went to, one person from each group was like, oh, I've been thinking about doing a podcast, which is great and like good for them. And I would love to help everyone who wants to talk about it. But they were like, can we meet for coffee? Can we do this sort of stuff? Like, which happens to a lot of people.
Meeting for coffee is the biggest.
And there's nothing wrong, like, he should ask. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to call him out in particular. It's just, but I also have to be real as well and be like, well, I'm kind of saying no to friends right now because I'm doing something else. I have to be consistent with my own thing. And I said to him, look, I hope you don't mind. But
you're allowed to say no, right?
Yeah. And I said, like, and I gave him a bunch of resources. That's the other thing. So I've recorded 10 plus podcasts on audience building that are like with people better than me. I've written about it here and I shared that. I said, I've written about the equipment I use here. Like, there's lots of resources of how to do this already in this area. And I was trying to still be helpful because he's like a nice guy and a friend of a friend. But it's like at some point, if I kept saying yes, and you guys have 100 more of these than I do, but just you keep saying yes to that, your whole calendar is stuff that you didn't even want to do. The other thing, Jack, what you said about that feeling at night, that's a rule that I now created with, and I heard it somewhere, and I'm just borrowing it.
Morgan Housel, he did for investing. Can you sleep at night?
Yeah, well, the sleep at night is similar, but this one was, even if I'm talking about with my partner and we're talking about this thing's annoying me, work related, if that comes up more than once, I'm just stopping doing it. Or I'm gonna end doing it. So because if at night I'm in my peaceful zone, I'm trying to fall asleep, and I'm like, oh, by the way, this thing pissed me off today because someone did this and they didn't understand this or whatever. That's enough of a filter at my current stage, and I'm just being honest. Like, I wouldn't have done that 10 years ago, but at my current stage, I need to be optimizing for low stress. I don't want to be stressed all the time.
Well,
man.
It's like a version of Jackson, right? You say yes, 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 yes until you can say no, 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 no.
Exactly. And so, I think that's a good. Go on, Jack.
I should also say I can erase everything I just said. It's all paradoxical, where it's like the idea of some like looming, terrible deadline that you have to get past is also like
what gets
this
you
is
going.
the huge paradox. It's like you have to be able to motivate yourself to the degree that you feel guilty for letting someone else down. That is the inflection point. You're like, I have articulated that I'm going to get this done to myself, and I take that as seriously as I would somebody else.
Yeah,
and
you're the person that you've promised it to.
Yeah. Most of the reason you accept these things is because you want accountability, really. It's got nothing to do with how good you are at the thing or how difficult. Like, I read this great tweet yesterday. I was like, people will invent all these other ways to make money except selling something.
Wait. Yeah. Which is basically all making money.
That's all economic activity, right? There's basically like you're hovering around the actual thing that you're supposed to do.
Launching a meme coin, finding interest in a high savings account. Just fucking sell something. This is like the oldest human activity. No, that's hysterical, dude.
Incredible.
That's like busy. That is hysterical.
Yeah.
No, I know. I mean, even like
make no mistakes too. That's the other thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Not to shit on our own product here, but like the act of getting that advice or asking for that, right? There's this great, again, I'm always pulling the Navalisms out. It's like people who ask for reading lists don't want to read. People that ask for advice don't want advice. People that what's the other one? People that ask for ideas on starting businesses don't start businesses. It's like so much of this is like your nature will reveal itself to you. You have to get out of your own way to some extent. It's like
I agree with it.
Like there are certain,
there's a lot of the time.
There's rewirings, right? This thing that I've been trying to articulate this. I might try and write something on this. Is like unlearning the stuff that keeps you stuck in the position you're in is way more important than like skilling up in stuff
or learning new stuff. That's awesome, dude. I love that.
Like, could you give an example?
Something. Yeah.
I agree.
I would say coming from the agency world where I like, cut my teeth as a designer is like time and materials is how you bill for your product. You go out, you find somebody to pay you, you consult with them, and you try and make the job last as long as possible. It sounds so insanely dumb to me in hindsight that it took me to 25 years old to figure this out. Or you can make a product with zero cost of replication, build distribution, and sell the shit out of it. And if you have this like incredible team of people, why are you not just doing that every day? And I was saying that in these agency businesses. I was like, why don't we just build a product and sell it? No, let's go out and like have this long-winded, and there's reasons for it, right? It keeps all these people like the professional LARP. In most cases, that's what it is, right? There's way more articulate versions. There was this like Peter Thiel talk I watched a clip of the other day talking about McKinsey, going from what McKinsey was when it was established, which was just like this cutthroat M&A like machine, to now it's like, let's charge someone $5 million to say increase revenue and cut costs, right? Put the trash in the bin. What was the
the New York City thing? Yeah.
His $8 million for McKinsey to say, there's too much trash, get more bins. Just like, and so much of activity is that. And like, in a way, that's like part of it, like getting into that world and seeing this is the unlearning of it too, is like, is this really how the world works here? It's like what we're spending our time doing. And you have to have these like massive unlearning experiences where even if you see that for what it is, you'll be more effective at it. I used to get this feedback all the time when I worked in those agencies. It was like, stop saying this shit. Like, we know this is dumb. We like, stop telling all the new people that arrive here that you're like, this is like a consulting LARP. You know? Yeah, we know that. You stay in the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
No, but
It's like, if you
that's a
like,
good one.
this is a 13,000 person company, somebody built it up and I have a job, I'm getting paid 6 figures a year because I'm part of this thing and I'm inside there talking shit about it. And I now, in hindsight, have the humility, I suppose, to admit that I was like totally misguided back then.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, you have a
That's
better
a good-
idea,
yeah.
go do that shit yourself. And I tried and I failed.
But Jack, that's a good point, because you know what? Especially at a company and a career, at some point you transition from just doing all the work. Like, I'm sure when you were starting, you were just creating great stuff. You know, at some point then you might be managing a team. It sounds like you were. And then you're in the pitches and a lot. And like for Google specifically, by the time I left from the beginning, it was night and day. And compared to now, I left in 2017, and that was what, 7-8 years ago. When I joined 2010, I actually was doing mostly work like in the beginning, and towards the end, it was just people doing meetings about meetings, or like, you know, basically being like, well, we're meeting a client 3 weeks from now, and let's review
Gotta
the deck.
prep.
And
Gotta prep.
yeah, and I get like, you know, you gotta be buttoned up. I get it. Like, you gotta be on the same page, but it just. But at least that was still kind of work. Like, you're going to present that to someone who's spending millions of dollars. The part that was really getting to me, which I hope I never have to do ever again, and I haven't for a while, is all the internal bullshit. You know, like what they would call visibility. It's like people sending emails about the work they did. I'm running this project. And it always comes down to incentives. We always talk about like the incentive to get promoted. How do you get promoted? Everyone's already good at their job there, pretty much, right? Like, people are pretty smart, they're pretty competent. So how do you stand out? If you're being marked on a curve, you need to find this little project where you know, I did it too, but like I was doing it mostly because I was interested in the stuff. But then you have to be like, send an email. Oh, well, this was impacting half of the country, and like all these clients, they spent so much money on this thing that I made, and it becomes this whole like storytelling thing of, I'm so good at my job and look at what I did, so that someone else can go in a room and pitch you for a promotion. And that stuff I hate like the most. And so do a lot of people that end up doing their own stuff. And so now the talking about unlearning, like a lot of my stuff when I left was unlearning that stuff, and catching myself being like, oh, I'm about to send this because I need to prove my value to the whole organization, not, you know, and get promoted and do all those things. Good thing when you leave a really big company, you can actually just mostly focus. If you're in a smaller place, you can mostly focus on like just doing good stuff and letting the work speak for itself. You still need to like tell people what you're doing, but now what I'm doing is the complete opposite. I'm literally just being paid for results, right? And that's the part I like actually the most, is just, if it doesn't work, you would stop working with me, right? And fair enough, like that gives me accountability too, and even like when I meet some of my friends now that will have those jobs, nothing wrong with those. Like, fair enough. Like, people got to do what they got to do. They just can't divorce the idea of the amount of time you're spending is how you earn your money. And I know this is a super basic thing of like moving beyond being paid for your time.
It's not obvious though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not obvious until you've actually seen it. Yeah, I remember, Jack, the first pod we did together on Create Lab, we talked about that idea of when you had to switch of now I'm actually. You only feel it when you really see it. So like now when I do my little dashboard that I told you guys about that I made, where I look at the time I'm spending on all the work I do, and to be frank, the amount of time I actually spend is not a huge amount, and it, you know, the money I make is basically proportionate to what I made in the past, so it's not like crazy higher either, but the time I spend is way less. So, and that's kind of what I've been optimizing for. And it's because I took out 90% of all that crap of being in a meeting, telling people, sending an email about stuff that doesn't actually matter. And so to me, that is an example of like, I had to kind of unlearn, you know, this hard wiring of like, also think of like being an immigrant family as well. And I'm probably still not being an immigrant, Jack, or you're immigrant here, but I'm saying the UK. Of like that hard working thing. I know you obviously were hard working doing your Honda factory job and your family as well. But that feeling of you're being rewarded for hard work. And it's always like, oh, well done. You did such a good job. You worked so hard on that. Not, oh, well, you actually created some sort of value, because you don't say that to a kid. Like, you know what I mean? You don't just, you basically get rewarded for, oh, you're such a good hard worker. And that's
Bilal,
actually not what
nice leverage you've implemented there, Bilal.
Exactly.
Nice leverage judgment you've deployed.
No,
Sorry,
Bilal. I want to put an exact word on something that you're saying though. Scarcity mindset. That is a very immigrant. I mean,
that's a good
immigrant
way to
parents,
put it,
right? Is like, to Jack's entire point here, unlearning. I don't think I've fully unlearned the scarcity mindset. Is like the way I look at a lot of investments and just life and opportunities. There's still that feeling of like full on like Asian hoarding, right? Like the South Asian, East Asia. You guys know, I mean, obviously not just specific to those communities, but it's a running joke within the Vietnamese community with like the Asian hoarding mom is like, you just go in the garage, this shit from like decades ago. It's obviously, it happens to everybody, but I think it within the Vietnamese community, it is a bit of a running joke. And I don't know if I've ever shaken it. Something I have thought about is making sure my son never has that mindset. I know it can be valuable, but having a scarcity mindset can be valuable. But I just don't want
when
him
is
to
it
have
valuable?
Well, I don't know about
actually need to
valuable.
survive, basically.
Yeah, it's
Yes, like
valuable
survival
in a true
mindset.
survival situation, right? And but I think I think it's quite detrimental. Blah. It makes sense in 1960s Pakistan. It makes sense in 1950s Vietnam, right? Like the survival mindset. Right, and it made sense.
Oh, honestly, even in 2000s,
right?
or 90s Britain for them when they when they didn't have much money, but
totally.
But no, Trung, this is a really good point. I'm glad you brought it up because I was talking to my parents about this. Like, there's a lot of financial stuff that all of us kind of still have that same mindset with financial stuff. For example, I mean, I'm just going to put up because I'll share it. But you guys saw Naval's response to our boy Ankur because this was jokes.
Oh, hilarious.
Nothing wrong with I actually respect the credit card game.
Well, can you say what happened here?
Yeah, so Ankur, who's promoting his business, which I respect, he's got a company called Carry. He's so teachable. Like, he's a smart dude. I actually like his stuff. But he wrote this thing about booking high and Marriott points. He was talking about some points hacking stuff. and then Naval just responds, "I thought you sold a company," which is this ridiculous like response. And then Ankur's like laughing and going back and forth. Now, like, what I'm saying is he's actually promoting his company. Like, it actually worked quite well. He got 1 million impressions on this.
Dude, he didn't hit up Naval, but yo, can you hit this? Let's get some engagement,
for real,
son.
exactly. And Naval might even be an investor in his company or something. But no, the point is there's a lot of, specifically with financial stuff, if you've ever grown up poor or had like real scarcity, actual scarcity.
Yeah.
And a lot of people even have scarcity when they go, they're students. Like, they don't have to be from a super poor background. Like, when you're like penny pinching, if you just stay with that mindset and you're basically doing the same things you did 10 years ago when you actually made way more money, you kind of get stuck in this thing. And those are the people who end up being 50, 60, and they're still like really worried about going out for a coffee for £5 or $5. But they'll spend like I'm not going to say names, but someone I know spent 30 grand on a car that is not even being used, but will be worried about spending £3 on a coffee because to them it's the value. It's the value of like, foolish. I can make this at home for 10p, but I'm gonna spend £3 outside, and it's not consistent. And so that I agree with what you're saying, Trung. Like, there is a big scarcity.
No, but let's square the circle here. So you'd ask, what is the negative? What is the positive scarcity mindset? Right?
Survival.
Well, it's the idea.
Right?
Well, it's the idea is like when you hear these stories like billionaires not tipping. Like there's two comments, right? One is like, what an asshole. The other one is also just like, well, that's how they became a billionaire, right? Is like, you know what I mean? Is like,
but that mindset of like looking at.
I'm not defending it. I'm just saying it's two sides of the same coin, right? And the other side is, well, what is the problem with abundance mindset? Well, you can have an abundance mindset when you don't actually can't pay for it, right? And you can't actually pay for that life. So
you're right. There's both sides.
I hate the fact that this is one of those, there's got to be a balance, but it is.
But it's true.
It's a lot of people, but it goes back to Jack's original point. A lot of people aren't unlearning that, and it's such a great point. Unlearning that thing that's like just from childhood is extremely difficult. And the other side of it is like, you don't want a spoiled kid, right? That's the other part of it. So here, let me just summarize with Charlie Munger. I don't know, Warren Buffett. One of those guys,
on full podcast boy now.
Yeah, full podcast boy. Give your kid enough to do something, but not enough to do nothing. There you go.
That's
Done.
the one. That is a
Right?
great line.
You
To be
want them to
fair.
have you don't want them feeling full scarcity, but you don't want them feeling full abundance. If we were to rephrase that, you don't want, I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you want to inflict some trauma on your kid. I don't know if that's the type of parenting you want to do. I know some parents do,
Well,
like
I'm
Andre
curious, do
Agassi's
you
dad.
guys? Yeah. Well, no, there's a lot. I'm actually curious to ask you guys. How do you cultivate that hunger in your kids, but also comfort? Like, what is the balance for you?
I'll
Like,
answer
there's
that
a
directly.
famous one,
Yeah.
Richard Branson, his mum kicking out the car and be like, "Find your way home." If that's true, who
God
knows?
damn, son.
You know, you'd be like going through Epping Forest for 3 hours trying to find a person. But no, how do you guys do that with your kids?
This actually goes back to something we talked about earlier. You know what's funny? We're 2 episodes in about kind of like some type of professionalism or career that we talk about. We don't even talk about AI yet, because
That was
AI
one of
is
the
about-
questions coming up.
Yeah,
by
I
the
was
way,
gonna say AI is about to wipe so many careers in the white collar industries, knowledge work that we came up in. So this relevant. I'm not gonna spoil it when we chat about it directly, but like the thing I'm saying with my kid is I just want them. I want my son to have something Jack just. I want him to find that thing where I want the obsession. I want to see that he's able to get obsessed about something, because I just think that's the meta skill that will allow him to compete in the AGI economy or whatever ends up happening with the pace of AGI. I mean, the pace of, AI and knowledge work. I'm just looking at it and I'm just like, just get obsessed, man. Just I need that from you. I want to see it. That's what I'm trying to cultivate. When he gets into something, I'm taking him to the library and I'm taking out 10 books about penguins. He's all about penguins right now.
Oh,
so I'm
yeah?
like, all right, let's go to the library.
Love that.
Let's find the penguin aisle. Get every single book about penguins. Start drawing them. Tell me fun facts about penguins that I never knew about. And
love that.
every 2 months, he's switching what that obsession is. Like these cars behind me, he's obsessed with cars. Bought him all the Legos. Let him build them. He built all of them. And now he's moved on to something else. That's fine. Just keep getting obsessed. I'll keep cultivating it. That's it. And I don't know if that directly answers the abundant scarcity. I'd never directly thought about that. I don't even want him thinking about that necessarily. I want him just to power through and just know that if you get obsessed about something, those things won't even matter.
Well, I love that, Trump. But Rogue, just a very quick question, and it's related to Jax as well. What if he starts getting interested in stuff that you feel isn't that healthy for him? You know what I mean? Like, for example, traditionally us growing up, if you were spending 14 hours on a PlayStation, at some point the parents are like, wait a minute, you need to have a break. Maybe gaming isn't even the worst example.
No, but I'll
like,
answer. Jack's kind of doing a version of this right now. So I know that Jack is very, and Celia in their household is very screen light, trying to avoid all screens. To answer your question, Bilal, I'm being quite flexible in what he's allowed to choose as his obsession, but there's a bit of nudging.
It's
Like,
within the
there's
fun fact fan area, basically.
I'm like, there's a little bit of nudging. Like he might be going down the wrong library aisle. Like I'm just like, I don't know if I necessarily want this out here. Just let me give you one little lower back nudge here. But that's what
fair enough. All right. So you do have some sort of filter. What about you, Jack? Is that something you thought about?
More broad, like when they're younger, I think it is more like self-esteem exercise, basically. Like let them figure stuff out by themselves, or let them fail and let them like prove to themselves that they can come back from failing at something, or are able to like fix a mistake, or they're able to, I forget this, I read something on this a couple years ago, but it's like you can't try and do too much for them either, right? Like if you step in every time, it's like you're erasing their ability to build reliance and self-esteem on them in their own way. And then I think like age appropriate, that just translates to each bracket, right? When they're really small, it's like when they can get dressed by themselves, even if it's really difficult, let them do it. Like when they're struggling with something, don't step in and say, "Oh, let me help you with that." Like the way they like build self-esteem through really basic stuff. And I think that you try and keep track of what that is at different ages, right? Where let them struggle to a degree that maybe is not Like there's this thing inside you where it's like, oh, I want to help them. I want to like stop them from feeling like they can't do it. But the satisfaction that comes from them figuring it out is so much greater than, you know, and you have to like correct yourself in real time around that stuff. And then like over a long period of time, I think it is just trying to convey that the one thing you can always fall back on in your life is like get good at something, you know. If it doesn't necessarily have to be like this commercially viable thing. I think, you know, people who can speak languages, play instruments, build things, like there's this just like inherent satisfaction to that, like encouraging, like Trung said, like any hobby or any creative or any like intellectual pursuit, show them how far they can take that or try and support that as far as it can go. I think is also like conferring these lessons of like how malleable the world is or how much you can learn about any given thing. Like the earlier you encounter that, the better, right? And you try and make that inherently obvious to them. And it's really hard to have a model for it with, you know, AI, for example, where it's like, oh, you want to learn anything? If you can speak and you can ask questions, you can do it. Like there's obviously that is maybe like constrained to just the academic frame. It's like, yeah, you can learn how to build an airplane talking to AI, but you actually have to have the pieces to put together, right? I think there is like a bit of hyperbole in the AI education debate because some things do require other tools or interfacing with other things.
You can't just like AI is gonna just have your son talk for 5 hours, but AI he'll learn anything, right? It's like,
yeah. It's like, I guess it is. It's also that delicate balance of, you know, you don't use a map anymore. You don't understand how to get to places without the thing that tells you to go from A to B, and that's like the real job of an educator is to like build up from first principles, right? Like what is first principles for a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and like those things get more and more sophisticated with time, but it goes back to that whole unlearning idea where it's like you're not memorizing the answer, you're providing the information for somebody to like reason to the answer logically. And like, I guess being able to figure something out by yourself and prove to yourself you can figure something out, that is the meta skill that translates into everything else. Like encourage a curiosity, let them fail at stuff, let them get better at stuff, and I think really try and convey like the thing that you will always be able to rely on is your skills, your education. Like somebody can take all of your stuff, you could lose all your money, you can, you know, have these things happen that are unpredictable in your life, but if you have a skill set to fall back on,
learning
like
permanent
insurance.
I love that. Well, being able to learn, being obsessive, and no, I like that.
That's great.
Very on board.
It brings up the next question actually perfectly. So this was a question from Dustin at Good Point Dustin, shared on Twitter. He said, I'm in B2B enterprise software sales and curious if you think AI will make this role disappear. It's mostly coordinating and courting prospects. What roles do you think will become more valuable with the rise of AI, online communities, in real life events? And the reason I bring that up specifically after what you said there, Jack, is around the idea of, I think one part is like encouraging, obviously I don't have kids yet, but like thinking about even with my nephew and stuff, like whatever they're naturally interested in, I think it's just an amazing thing to encourage either way, like you said. But then it is at some point when they're older, or even for yourself, translating things you're interested in into some form of work. And so the example I'd give, if someone's really into ballet dancing or basketball or football, but they might not be a professional basketball player, football player, or ballet dancer, like what I guess the thing is, we're all kind of lucky that we are interested in certain things that kind of actually translate quite well to career stuff too, and like getting paid a certain amount of money so we can have a good foundation.
Oh, that's a great question. But
you know
let me address that directly. Actually, I know what you're saying is like, well, you don't want to send somebody down a route like to be
like a starving artist.
like an Olympian in some niche sport, right? That I actually know.
Well, if they enjoy it, great. But I'm saying they still need to make a living is kind of the point. And it relates to what Dustin's saying too.
No, I think, again, I think that meta skill is probably more important. Is like, listen, man, if you can become obsessed about a niche Olympic sport, you could probably become obsessed about something else.
That's
right?
true. That's
and I think that meta skill is, again, it's about this idea of exploring a bit. Yes, 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 until you say no, 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 no. And one of your no's might have to be this, like ballet, like you mentioned. One of the no's may end up having to be ballet. Like maybe you love it, but it's actually not viable in the long term. Commercially, and not to say everything has to be commercial, but
it could still be a part of your life. That's the point.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be work. It could be your hobby. Exactly. It could be something else. So you could be the #1 ballet podcaster in the world. You know? Well, what I mean?
No, but seriously, there you go. Yeah. You can have a like a really,
or number
like,
13. You know, it doesn't
or
matter.
Or have a random like ballet newsletter that just slaps, right? And then like all the ballet lovers read it. But Bilal, the question actually, the AI thing is actually, the B2B sales part is actually quite interesting. The way that it was framed, let me ask you guys this, because I know that you do a lot of pitching for your business. I mean, in that world, you're headed literally into AIs talking to AIs. That's what's going on, right? So like, what is valuable? It's just like, listen, it's gonna be so cliche. It's what can they do, man? It's a human relationship stuff. Like we joke about it here. It's like, I'll give you a very interesting example. Look what's happening in Substack. Substack was a written, obviously word first. I'd even call it a social network in a way. It's meant for newsletters, right? Easy publishing of newsletters, get readers.
Yeah, it's becoming more of a social network now.
Yeah, if you actually watch what's actually happening too, live video, podcasts, they're making it basically turnkey. And I think it's that they understand the hedge that's going on here. Generative AI is making the written word, it's commoditizing it, right? And we've talked about here a million times. It's like, it's about the personality and about the humans that ultimately matter. Like Sam Altman wrote a poem. Do you guys saw that? He said they trained OpenAI. They released a poem. I read it. I felt nothing, right? Like, I read it. I'm like, wow, this like, it kind of feels like a really good writer wrote this. But knowing that it was AI, I felt zero. I felt nothing.
Jokes. I still find the jokes are way off.
The jokes are way off. But this is like goes to the broader answer. I think economist Tyler Cowen has a really great line. They asked him, "Is like, what do you do? Like, you're a super fast reader, super fast writer. Like, what have you been doing with AI?" He's like, he's been doing a lot of things that are just like that AI can't do. He's like, I've increased my networking a lot. I go on a lot more podcasts now because I'm literally just looking at the landscape of what can be copied and the pace it's happening. I'm like, what is orthogonal to that? So I think to answer the B2B sales question directly is, how much of B2B sales actually does still involve relationships? How much are the larger accounts is the meet and greets and the conferences, and that we kind of joke about now is like, oh, what a waste of time. You can just network online. Well, actually, maybe in the next 5 years, that because these AIs are just going to talk to each other, maybe actually going to the conference, the way that people made fun of conferences before, are actually fully valuable. Bilal, you talked about in real life, right?
Yeah.
That was mentioned. So that'd be kind of my take.
It's a good point. I think sorry, Jack, if you had something to add, but I'm actually kind of conflicted on this one because I think he might not be doing this, but people group B2B sales as one big thing. There's so many different parts to it. I think even what you said there, Trung, about networking or meeting people, I still think personally, personal relationships will become even more important, similar to what you were saying there. And ultimately, sales still exists because people do want to buy from people they trust. So even if there's AI agents in the future talking about feature parity and all the different comparison points, it'll probably still come to some form of human decision making to a certain extent, maybe, I don't know, on a certain scale. But specifically about relationships, is not all relationships are the same. So Dustin, specifically what you're saying, I'd think beyond what your current role is and think about even relationship building. What's the deeper second, third level part that you're actually building there? And it's really trust. It's reputation and trust. So if I'm going to, selling to a particular like B2B or whatever, if I'm doing my job correctly, it's because they trust my opinion. And so building trust is, making that connection with the person. But more importantly is what are you sharing with them, talking to them about how you acting as a person for them to trust you and your opinion. So that doesn't mean you have to, but you could write a newsletter like Trung does, create visuals like Jack does, do a podcast like I've done. And now you'll see that you can actually build reputation by some of those kind of skills. It may also be you don't like doing content stuff, but you like, maybe you're really good with people and do stuff in real life. You could be the person who's doing meetups for people in a certain city. You're the one who's bringing good people together and sharing stuff that's working for them. So it depends on your skill set and kind of what you like. It kind of does go back to the Ikigai stuff that we talked about, like the things you're actually good at, things people to come into you for help with, and like what people actually need. So I guess a part of this is, will people need person-to-person interaction in a world of AI agents speaking to each other? Probably less, but maybe the highest level of decision-making will still happen with people. And if that's the case, how do you position yourself to be a trusted person in that space? That's how I'd think about it. And like the best example, honestly, I'd say someone like Lenny, who does like, for product managers specifically.
Oh, Lenny newsletter? Yeah, unbelievable.
Now, when I interviewed him on the pod, he had maybe 100,000, 200,000 people. I think he just hit 1 million subscribers. And if you work in product management, you pretty much read his newsletter or you listen to his podcast. And it's just like you become the expert for that one particular thing if you love it enough. So yeah, that's how I would think about it. But yeah, very good question. Something for us all to ponder. What about you, Jack? Anything on that to add?
No, I think sales is an unbelievable moat. Like if you can sell stuff, was basically what we said. I don't know if it was this episode or the last.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
If you can sell stuff, you're going to be fine. Like that's go back to the what you teach your kids. That is a fundamental principle. It's like how do you make money? You either sell something or you sell something for someone else and they give you a little bit of what they make.
Someone made something and you sell it for them. Yeah.
Those are the two directions you have. So you can either decide to stand at the front of that or a couple steps back from that. Like, I think if you're a genuinely good salesperson, the skills are beyond transferable. It's hard to think of something that
isn't better with those skills. Because it's really convincing people and communicating.
Yeah, exactly. People will extrapolate out the AI thing, but to Trung's point, it's like the things that are B2B SaaS, a good example. It's like that is not a email sequence that is selling a 6-7 figure contract, right? It's just never going to happen. Like those things, you have to sit on the phone and plug in this API to that API and speak to the security person, and you have a moat for a very long time with that. Like literally, companies will dissolve before that stuff is a reality where there's no requirement for a person to facilitate the sale of a product. I don't think that's going away for a long
also
time.
Like didn't Salesforce, we covered it on the pod, Salesforce are hiring more people in the division that is AI sales or something like that.
Well, this is also the joke about
like AI. We're in like metaverse 2.0 with a lot more. There is a lot more immediately obvious like productivity benefits, quote unquote. But to go back to the McKinsey thing, it's like most productivity is fake anyway. Most of the stuff people are doing is pointless.
Yeah.
Like I think people like this allows you to do more pointless stuff at scale. It's not like like efficient market hypothesis. It's like efficient productivity hypothesis. Like most of the stuff we're all doing is superfluous, nonsensical, LARPing. And we've decided to pay each other to do that and circulate
like talking
currency,
on a podcast,
buy houses and cars and do all this stuff. It's a social contract, like it's a great game we're all playing. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be playing it with you guys. Yeah. But I'm saying there's not a day that everyone's going to wake up and be like, OpenAI is now doing all of that stuff. It's like most stuff is made up anyway, guys.
No, but that's the best. That's actually the best argument for that's like AI apocalypse is like. And we're saying this as people that all did it before.
People make more stuff up.
I'm already doing
people
fake
make
work.
shit up.
I've been doing fake work for 15 years.
It's like saying, nobody walks to work anymore. They drive, All right, great. Now we're going to do 1,000-page keynotes instead of 100-page keynotes.
Yeah.
That's AI. That's what's happening, boys.
Well, you go from the summary to deep research. Where it exactly 30 pages. I'm like, I thought we were trying to get to the summary here.
I actually wanted to talk about deep research because this is the entire argument about McKinsey, right? Like, I obviously did one of those tweets, like, when deep research came out, for people who don't know, deep research is the open AI thing where you ask it to do like literally a 30-page report about anything and it comes out, it's like 80% there. But the whole point is McKinsey is dead. Boston Consulting Group is dead. But it goes to exactly what Jack and Bilal are just saying. 95% of McKinsey's value, unfortunately, for all the trolling we do of it, it's about trust between C-suites and McKinsey partners, right?
Someone to blame when it goes wrong, like McKinsey said.
It has nothing to do with deep research. It has nothing to do with these.
LARP.
Yeah, it's an incredible LARP,
Golf
right?
courses, steakhouses, conferences.
It's all fake work.
Exactly. Look at the conference business, man. The most incredible grift of all time. It's unbelievable. Like Las Vegas. If you go and look, I think I might have even said this before. There's like a website that indexes the conferences that they do in Vegas. It's like there's a rivet conference. Literally, like there'll be like a
for riveting,
duct
for
tape
like
conference.
Yeah.
Literally the little metal shit that you like tack stuff together with, and they will draw tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, if you're in
Las
the duct
Vegas,
tape industry, you gotta be there. That's
you
what it is.
You must be there to network because you're selling duct tape. It's all bollocks, boys. It's all. Made up.
Hold on. By the way, we're
marketing.
not shitting on riveting people.
Great. That's great.
People.
We love you. That, great. It's great.
I get what you're saying.
Thank you. I'm saying it's all like an invented game. You have to put enough of a veneer on it that it feels like it's a professional activity, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna go to one of the talks and then get blasted for 6 nights and then go home back to the rivet shop.
There we go.
By the way,
you had a good 6 days.
By the way, you're supporting
had a good time.
The local bars that are serving you Guinness from last episode.
Exactly, man.
And you're supporting Guinness.
Split the G.
Thousands, tens of thousands of people along the supply chain.
This is great. This is a good tangent. Go on, Jack. Go on, finish it off.
You're cooked, son.
Like computers. It's the same analogy, right? It's like computers are automating work, and you can do way more calculations per second on a computer than you can on a piece of paper. Did that grow the economy or did it shrink the economy?
Yeah.
Conversation over, boys.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It grew.
Only.
I do think I 100% agree. All jokes aside, I do think there is 100% the metaverse vibe happening right now. If everything's going away, like I agree. That's
that's hyperbolic. There is good stuff.
I agree though. Yeah. That's the stuff that's happening. People are like, the vibe code. We talked about vibe coding. Vibe coding means all the developers are gone. Like, no, they're not gone. They're fixing all the errors I made in Replit. Like, I get that. That is happening too. No, but it does grow the pie. It means that someone like me can make something and get me in that pipeline. Maybe I actually do learn some more stuff. And it can make someone who's good at actually coding 5 times faster. So there's a bit of both. I do think there is an element of like certain types of jobs will be, automated away.
Changed,
yeah. The same way manufacturing got rid of certain jobs and got Jack on the production line putting on the exhaust versus like doing them all manually every single time. Like, so it's just an evolution. But yeah, it's a weird time, boys. I feel we're in a weird. It's only March. Do you know what I mean? It's mid to late March, and there's a lot of things happening. All right, let's move on. That was a little tangent for me where my head just went because there's been a wild few weeks here. But anyway,
this is great. This is related, good, you guys. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable couple
AMAs.
episodes. Yeah, we're doing a good job. Phenomenal questions, by the way. That's getting us going because the Telegram group's been absolute shambles with that comment situation, by the way. I don't know.
All good.
Yeah. We got to turn it on and off. But anyway, related here, someone called Map. I'm assuming that's your short name or you just like maps. So he's asking about, he or she said, what is the best city for online non-software entrepreneurship? I feel like San Francisco is good for tech, NYC for finance, Houston is good for oil and gas. Is there a city for online business? I want to get Jack's response to this first because Jack's face. Is there a city for online business? It may be in your question here, Map. Or is that mostly online communities? No, it's a fair question, but I do want to get your takes.
This is an interesting question.
But real quick, call back to Naval's thing. You said 3 most important things: who you marry, what you work on, where you live. I agree with that. It actually makes a big difference to your life. But specifically for online entrepreneurship,
Hit it.
Well, the obvious answer is the internet itself is where those people are. But I would say there's still the rank order of cities that he or she put together is still correct.
Yeah.
Like the concentration of ambitious people adjacent to those industries is in those cities. And if you go to a like quote unquote second tier city, no offense to second tier cities, not even close.
Yeah.
You know, like
no, you're right.
And being on the internet, you can get there remotely, but the benefit of having both is far greater, right?
Do you feel that moving to Nashville, Jack?
I feel like if I just started here, I would not have
what you've done.
Like found the energy that you can harvest from a big city is crazy, and the experience I will say that you can stack up in a short amount of time.
The collision of people, and then SF is so small with tech concentration, it does make quite a big difference.
Let's throw some.
There's no substitute for it. Is the real answer.
Yeah.
Can you throw some secondary ones though? As you mentioned, can you guys throw some? I mean, Jack, you're an example.
Miami is a primary market, but would you say
there?
Miami is a primary or secondary though? For tech, I'd say secondary, but for a city, it's a pretty. I don't know actually. Maybe
it was that COVID narrative fizzled out big time.
Yeah, that's come down. Austin, similar. Nashville probably
Austin has the same bucket. I reckon Austin has like a stronger base than Miami was able to build
keep
up.
hold of.
Why is that, do you think?
I think Miami is like a really extreme place to live, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, like climate-wise, it gets a little swampy. People can get a little wild. It depends on where you're hanging out.
Yeah. Culture, at one point I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. And then you visit enough times, it's like it's a very acquired taste living somewhere like that.
I agree.
Well, can we do a mini pivot actually? We wanted to talk about spring break. Jack, what are your Miami spring break?
I don't really have much to say. I'm just saying Miami's reputation during spring break is not hasn't been good historically, and they had a massive initiative to like calm it down. So they put police on every corner in Miami Beach. And I think it just like wrecked their this probably one of the biggest events of the year for local businesses too. Just like obviously hundreds of thousands of people descend upon Miami Beach during that week, spend money. And I think they've basically completely neutered the activity there now. It's like very quiet. So
it was insane though, right?
For the people that want to go and live, the people that want to go live in Miami Beach, that's great. That's a great result. But I think for revelers, not so much, mate.
Revelers. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I didn't have much else to add.
I had a question. Have you guys done Mexico spring break? I'm curious. I've actually never done it.
I don't think I went. I went to Cancun one time, but not at spring break. I went another time, and that was big for spring break, obviously. Though this is long. I was like 18. So it was
how was it?
Foreign concept, man. Spring break.
It was fine. Sorry, go on, Jack.
It's a strictly American concept, right? Spring break.
Yeah,
no,
we
goes to
Canada.
Canada
has it.
Oh, Canada has it. All right.
Because what's the equivalent of ours? What's the equivalent of ours? We just have summer and
Easter. Easter break doesn't really
hit as hard, does it? Spring break versus Easter break. You go eat a bunch of chocolate.
What are you guys doing? Easter break.
Yeah, that's that.
Man,
no,
I tell you though,
yeah, go on.
You know what, Bilal? I was going to say the commercialization of Easter is way superior in the UK. It's one of the very few things.
Oh, really?
That the UK. Look at the Easter eggs thing. I don't know, like
the
you go in a shop. When I was growing up, no, every chocolate bar had
their own version.
Had their own like concept for an Easter egg, man.
Yeah,
like it was
Galaxy
the most insane holiday.
Yeah.
Growing up. And they don't do that.
Do they not do that here? I haven't really noticed it. Yeah, you're right. Probably is. I
do Easter egg hunt, paint eggs and stuff. But man, I feel like that is one of the
one that UK is actually
the
doing
one
more.
Corner of capitalism that the UK has actually exceeded at.
Is Easter eggs specifically?
Yeah, exactly.
That's quite jokes.
There
must be a few others.
Someone refute that.
There must be some old ones like shipping or something. You know, like those older industries that are just still going. Fax machine vibes going on.
When people are given England a hard time, I just have to remind them, don't ever forget those Easter egg games, buddy.
All right. Should we go on to the next question, boys? Very good discussion. Thanks, Map, for that question there. And if your name is actually Map and your question is about cities for entrepreneurship, that's even better.
That
would be very good.
Yeah.
That would be good. It would be great if Map just created an account called Map just to ask that one question. That would be even better. But all right, another question.
Followers. Yeah, hit it.
This is from Olivia as well. She said, if 2024 was the year of the crying selfie, where do you see 2025 going in terms of internet culture and particularly the cadence of Instagram? Will authenticity always be the pinnacle of social content, and how, if at all, could AI change that dynamic? Let me reread that last part. Will authenticity always be pinnacle? Yeah, I mean, I'll write this in the chat.
I think authenticity is gone, to be honest. That's interesting. No, here. Well, let me walk through what. Tell me if what I'm saying reflects the question at all. Well, we've talked about this. What's the history of social media? Your friend network, famous people, like Kardashians are the number one example of somebody that grew up in this famous people era, and then algorithmic.
You're doing this chronologically, Trung, yeah?
Yeah, just like the phase of like 2004, 2010 was probably Facebook, first in
I
the
guess
university,
before was MySpace
high school,
and stuff. Before
family, right? So people you knew.
People you know.
And then call it 2010 to before TikTok, but 2010, 2017 was like the Kardashian. You start getting fed stuff in the feed
Instagram.
from super famous people. Yeah. Like celebrities, influencers. And then the last 8 years, you don't have to be a celebrity influencer to blow up on TikTok or Instagram Reels now. If you had any good content, these algos would surface it, right? So that's like the three phases. It went from your immediate network to influencers, famous people, to algo, just anything that slaps.
It's like your network, follower graph, interest graph.
Yeah,
that would be the three stages.
So I think if the question is about does authenticity work for IG or social in general, I think that's long gone. I don't think any of that really matters anymore. And then that adds on top of the fact that like 1% of people produce 99% of the content. And that's not to say that other mediums don't. Maybe Bilal will suggest that another medium, podcasting, for example, authenticity matters a lot, right?
Okay, yeah.
So you see what I'm saying? It's like, so tell me again if I'm interpreting this correctly.
I think that's a good, go on. I mean, it's a good point. I might actually take the other side on that and say it becomes more important because like we talked about, it's actually Trung maybe a month ago, around with more AI slop, basically more content, what becomes the scarce resource.
Yeah, but it's not right now though, right? But it isn't. That's what I'm saying. I agree with you.
So you're saying for 2025, I'm saying
yeah, 2025 it is not, but I agree with you. That's a great point. Next 5 years, the pendulum's going to come back.
Okay. Sure. I would fragment this on a few different variables. I would say there's the technological variable of what actually goes wild or sets free on the algorithm. I would then say it from like a cultural lens, right? Like what is culturally, the pinnacle. And so like within social content, like I do think authenticity, just the way I'm hearing it from her, is more the style, you know what I mean? Like I feel like people can kind of sense when something's not real. And I think even just if you think of like politically where we've gone, and it's both political and socially acceptable. So we went from PC culture, like 2010s, everyone's scared to say stuff, to like swinging the other way.
Yeah.
Going wild, anything goes. Even like we talk a lot about comedy. I think comedy is often like a leading indicator of culture because they normally live on the edge, because comedians can often talk about stuff in a way that normal people can't, and then things kind of follow. So maybe 2018, 19, 20, like we were already starting to see, we talked about that, the Chappelle moment, where it was like, oh, wait a minute, he's saying stuff that we're not supposed to say, and he's normally being loved by everyone. And I think, to me, I still think personally authenticity is still going to always be kind of king in a way. And maybe you're right, like for 2025, maybe that doesn't stand out as much, but I do think based on what I'm hearing from her question, it is still the most important thing. I don't know. I think like people are kind of tired of just like the performative, because I'm seeing the opposite.
But it still dominates though, right? It's just like Mr. Beast is the most popular YouTuber in the world. It's like, what, like, I'm not saying
that's on the high end.
He's actually he's actually explicitly has no personality. That's when he shows it. He said it himself.
You're right.
He's like,
right.
I don't want.
I think I'm thinking on the podcast lens specific because
Okay.
a lot of the content I consume, but that's the thing. A lot of the content I see on social media is from podcasts. They're like clips.
I see.
So that's
what
where
you're saying.
I'm, because I'm thinking of my feed. You know what I mean? And if I literally think of my feed outside of Twitter, because Twitter is actually quite different, or X, I'm thinking of like Instagram and TikTok. My feed is pretty much comedy clips, gym clips.
But Bilal, you
like
trained it. You trained it to perfection.
So to me, both of the people that I see on those are pretty, like I'm thinking about Theo Von clips. Is Theo Von literally thinking out loud, his crazy brain going wild? You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking from a personal point of view versus.
Well, let's see if Butcher can square us here. Butcher.
Jack, anything on that? And then to add to her question, to clarify, she asked, what is 2025's internet culture, essentially?
Here we go.
I don't know if this is on Instagram yet, but did we talk about dead internet theory? We did, right?
We never went deep into it, but I want you to hit it and tell us where it goes next.
Well, I think what's interesting is that is how I would catalog the chapters in social, where you have hyper personal. Here are the people that you saw earlier today, and you stay in touch with them when you're not physically together. Early Facebook, MySpace, all of that stuff. And then you go to the next era is, and that's like a really curated thing, right? Where here's this album of photos, here's this whatever. And then the
college party, that was a big one.
Exactly. And then the next era is stories. I think we're way too biased on X as a platform.
Yeah.
But more broadly, it's stories, which becomes this disposable thing. Snapchat, whatever, where it's ephemeral, way more it goes away after 24 hours, which is a very different mechanic than here. I'm uploading this photo album forever. Then live, completely stream of consciousness or long form. And then I guess there's two ways to take the next part is in my mind, it's gone barbell, where you have these really intimate small group chats of people that you found through this massive mechanism. And then you have almost back to network or cable news type broadcast of trends. The experience on X now is obviously hyper tailored to you, but you are getting these power law outliers of content. You're not really even discovering the stuff from the people that you've subscribed to necessarily, right? It's gone from friend graph to interest graph. And then on top of that, now you have totally synthetic information in response. Every tweet I post now, probably 50% of the replies will be bots.
I
don't know what yours is.
No. Well, how did so many? It's unbelievable.
Especially X. That's the thing, though, right?
Yeah.
Like you
and
said,
it's different than Instagram.
A bit more on it, but there's definitely a problem with all of them.
It's hard to give an objective answer because we're so platform biased too.
Yeah.
Instagram to me does not feel I have conversations with people I know well on X every day. Instagram to me feels way more let's broadcast this out to the world, a more random discovery mechanism. But they're probably way more similar.
That's interesting because I would say because for you have visualized value on Instagram versus your personal account though. So I would say if you spoke to the Instagram people, they would say most of the posts on Instagram are actually just DMs, right? And so that's why when your actual news feed is basically all people you don't follow, it's House of Highlights, Thierry Henry on CBS, Arsenal clips, so whatever you're into. Then stories are basically all the people most of the time, a lot of the time, depends on your feed. And then really the most no one posts on their feed anymore, pretty much. Our age anyway. If you post on your feed, you got married or had a baby, pretty much. It's a big life moment in your real timeline. So you're right. I think we're all seeing our answers are all so specific to how we use it on each platform. And Jack, you've got a unique thing that you post on Visualize Value on Instagram too, and Twitter as yourself. So it's a little bit different. I also want to call back to what you said about the live, Because that's a really good point. Like the live is an area which we rarely talk about.
What do you mean, like Twitch streaming?
Yeah, Twitch streaming. But I'm saying, like, have you seen Speed? Have you seen this guy Speed?
No. Yeah.
Or
like film their whole life.
Yeah. They're basically like
who's the guy crushing it?
Speed. Probably.
Aiden Ross.
Aiden Ross. Kai
Sinat. Yeah, those guys. Those three are the big ones. Speed, Kai Sinat, and.
So this actually goes to the earlier question. You're right. I think here's
the question
the answer.
is, are they authentic though? Like that's the question.
Man, Kai, when you're live streaming for literally 20 hours straight, it's hard not to be. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying. That's okay. And I would say they're on the edge of new stuff because I think more people will. I think there'll be more streaming than less in the future, and they're actually at the cutting edge. Because if you just think volume-wise, they're doing 20 hours a day, like some of them.
It's
literally.
Crazy. It's crazy.
And they're literally documenting their whole life. It's like that movie. Was it Truman Show?
Truman Show.
Yeah. Truman Show. There was a few. There was another one where they followed someone around. I remember when Gary Vee started getting, when I did, it was like early 2010s at some point, around when I did an interview with him, people were just so shocked, like, oh, this guy's got a guy following me around with a camera. Do you remember that? D-Rock.
What was the joke? Make 1,000. Follow me around, make 1,000
micro content. Yeah. No, but I remember him doing that and being like, yo, that is kind of weird. That's a little, like why, like how much ego you got. That's honestly what I thought. I'm just being, that you need someone following your whole life. And now, look, how many people have that? Like, it's literally the content world is doing that. How many CEOs of companies, maybe not like Fortune 500 companies, but I'm talking about people that have built a business on their personal brand. That's all they're doing. Or there's the kind of vlogging style. Even people who have got podcasts are doing day in the life, like they're doing their vlog versions of that, or they're expanding to their wider thing, which it makes sense. It's like a content funnel. You start with a small little micro content, you grow to 2 hours of a podcast talking about shit like this. So that's kind of the full spectrum there. So it's a very good question, actually, because I don't know if there's one answer. That's the kind of annoying thing with it. But if you had to give one...
I don't know if I don't know if is the premise valid, the crying selfie. Would you boys have said that? I would
that's
say
a good point.
That is because that's her.
That's her feed. Right? That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay, so let me get a little meta on it.
That's good, yeah.
The response would be the crying selfie as a phenomena is localized to every person, right? Like early days of the internet, it's like everybody's experiencing the same story. Now it's like you see the world through this curated set of stories that are delivered to you, and you make assertions like the crying selfie is the thing that defines the internet in this year with such confidence, because that's exactly how it's been crafted to you. But in reality, like that statement doesn't land with me because I'm like, crying selfie, I don't understand. I don't see that very often. Maybe I've seen it a couple of times, but it isn't like a cultural moment significant enough for me to associate with an entire year. So my point would be like the phenomena that you see that as a defining thing is happening to every person, and they assume that it's happening to everybody else. That's like the fragmentation thing.
That is the meta. No? Yeah, you nailed it. I think everybody will have their own version of what authenticity is, right? Because like, Bilal, you touched on it when you were talking about podcasting, right? I think we all kind of landed on the same thing of the broader question is like, what is the equivalent of, as Jack's saying, of the crying selfie, but for the stuff that's getting fed down your algo, right? Like, what is the equivalent of that?
Arsenal blog.
Yeah. That's just the Arsenal blog, right? So to
fans crying, basically. Crying selfies of not winning.
Wait, bad year? Has it been a bad year?
No, it's been a mostly good year. We saw a lot of injuries. So, yeah. We're still in the Champions League quarter final. Real Madrid. Big clash of the Titans, you know what I mean? But yeah, we'll get to that. We'll do that in a few weeks. Will depend on how it goes. But yeah, very good question.
No,
I like where that went in the end, because it was definitely, it kind of, the premise was it actually the year the selfie, a crying selfie, and actually just really quickly, when I read that first, I thought of something which wasn't actually a crying selfie. Now I realize, no, crying selfie is someone just crying on the, like, why would you take a picture of yourself when you're crying, sort of thing. But I was thinking of the, there's the kind of woke picture of someone crying when Trump became president in 2016, like the original, and that wasn't the same thing actually. But in my head, that's what I was thinking of. All right,
like setting up the camera to cry into it, and
that's it.
Like, which is the absolute opposite of quote unquote authenticity, right? Like the process involved in doing that.
Yeah.
And I think it's like this stuff
crying
is
on
so
demand,
yeah, this stuff is so, I don't know, contrived. It's like a lot of the best players in that world are like insanely disciplined performers, right? They show up every day, no matter what, put on a show. And in a lot of ways, that is the opposite of the definition of authenticity, right? You perform every day, no matter what. It's like you forced yourself through something. It's hard to see the internet changing, but if you experienced it like 10 years apart, it would be like such a different experience on your brain. Completely. Like the frequency, the intensity of it is like,
it's
man,
mad.
2009 Facebook. You could actually complete it. You could actually finish it.
You just said that. You could finish
you could actually finish. You could get to the bottom of the feed and you'll be done.
You could finish it. Yeah, because you're right. They made the unlimited scrolling thing. Well, whenever that was. But you're right, because when you said 2008 or 2009, I was just thinking
Jack,
of the uni
that's a banger
albums.
tweet. Wait, that has somebody tweeted? That's amazing. Man,
I
the year
never heard it
2009.
You could finish it. That's funny.
You just spent 30 minutes on Facebook. You finished the entire
You completed
feed.
the internet. Make no mistakes. You did the whole thing.
Go to sleep and come back tomorrow.
Yeah,
and then some engineer, man, Rick Burton was probably waiting outside their house right now, came up with the infinite scroll.
Yeah.
The infinite scroll, that is actually, it's a good point. I remember even in web
that
design.
is an inflection point of humanity.
I remember in like WordPress, when I would upgrading my WordPress theme or something, there was a pagination. Yeah, I remember it would go from that to unlimited scroll. I'm like, oh, actually, that's an interesting idea. Then you realize you only got limited. Yeah, you'd be feeding.
No, hold on. If you think about quite literally, the number of human hours that were wasted because of that invention, you're talking hundreds of billions of combined hours.
And
I don't
also
even know that's
revenue though for those companies, honestly. From an ads hat, like the amount of time spent because of that is absolutely terrible.
And if you think about it, like the pivot too is like, hey, here's two ideas, guys. Let's have an unlimited scroll and let's just throw any old shit in the feed.
Yeah.
Don't worry about who
the one
that
everyone else is addicted to. It's kind of
watching this one. Chuck it in there. It's like it's so crazy to think that somebody designed it any other way in the beginning. And now you're like, oh, it's people who use the internet now. It's kind of like us burning CDs 15 years ago. They'd be like, what? You used to like, if page used to stop, like you could finish the internet. That's such a ridiculous thing to tell to somebody now that's, scrolling 100 miles a day. Crazy concept.
I think we can wrap on that, guys.
That
was a good one
for a while. This was great. I enjoyed that a lot. Thanks everyone for submitting your questions. We'll be back next week. There were a few we didn't get to. I'll save them for another day.
Yeah.
And
Thanks,
I appreciate
guys.
all the messages. Thanks everyone. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Nice one.